Since the beginning of civilization, since people started grouping together and looking for someone to lead them to a more prosperous and easy life, humans have been obsessed with one thing more than anything else, and that is control. But there was a time, not too long ago, where humanity had the resources and the capabilities at their fingertips to free themselves of this control. And we were so close, but we failed. Now, when you think of control, you probably think of communist dictatorship like China or North Korea. And yes, that is a good example of the people in power controlling the population. But the real control is much more elusive and discreet. Did you ever think that control might look like a free country in which you're free to make your own decisions, eat what you want, read what you want, watch what you want, pursue what you want to do? Could you ever imagine that that is actually a system designed to control the population? You see, when people know and feel that they're being controlled, it tends to cause a discomforting feeling internally, and it makes them want to rebel and fight against that. And that can cause problems for the people in power. They want to enjoy their control and influence without having to worry about quashing rebellion or dissent or frustration amongst the public. The less the public feels like they're being controlled, the better. Now, there's a reason that if you go back 300 years ago, a giant, fully stocked library in somebody's house was probably the biggest status symbol you could have. Because at that time, valuable and powerful ideas and information were not easily accessible. They were reserved for the rich and the powerful. And within these books, in these lessons, in these texts, were strategies and information that in the right hands could be more powerful than a weapon. There's a reason that slave owners were more concerned with their slaves becoming educated and literate than they were about them becoming armed. Because they knew that if these slaves could read and learn about the histories of other oppressed people, who fought up against their masters and built lives and societies that were better for themselves, that they would have the information and the inspiration to actually want to try and do that themselves. But if all they had were weapons, they would be less likely to revolt because they wouldn't have a clear understanding about how to craft a better life for themselves. And that same idea remained true, but just on a societal level. That's how the people in control operate. And it remained that way essentially up until only 20 years ago. Do you ever wonder why college for most of human history was such a valuable learning experience?
What's happening? What's happening? It's a gyroscope now.
One valid bit, one modified bit, one reference bit, 5 permission bits.
Because you had the best thinkers and experts in fields as the professors teaching the students. The books in these libraries were vast and full of the best and most powerful knowledge in human existence. And to the people in charge, this was extremely valuable because more people became skilled, more people became intelligent, more people understood how the world operated and how they can individually break free of the constraints. But there was no way to share these ideas on a mass scale. The radio was controlled, newspapers were controlled, books and publishing was controlled, TV was controlled. So if you wanted to share these powerful ideas, there was a great chance your message was never going to reach the masses. So in that way, the people in control could benefit from individuals who are becoming educated and understanding how to become prosperous without worrying about too many people getting access to this knowledge and it being a threat to their control. But you know what changed that? The internet. With the proliferation of the internet, people got access to ideas and information that was only reserved for the elite, that never made its way to the typical media that reached the masses. With the internet, people could now share ideas on a mass scale to millions of people, something that scared the people in control. And this was so scary to them because their strategy for maintaining control was giving their people this facade of freedom. And the only way that they really could have controlled the internet and how people were able to receive and digest information would be to establish some sort of totalitarian state like North Korea. But then the people would have obviously known that they were being controlled and would have fought back against that. So when a company like Google was created that allowed people to filter through all of the noise on the internet, ask specific questions about what they wanted to learn, where to find it, how to learn new skills, and they were presented with the best and most credible information on these topics, you can only guess how fearful the people in charge were, that their control over society had never been as fragile than that. And then you got YouTube and the social media companies, which completely revolutionized the way that people were able to distribute their ideas on a mass scale. People were learning in ways that were never possible before. Information that was once reserved for the hallowed halls of academia or high-level business or high-level politics were now accessible to the everyday person. The secrets that the people in charge used to control and manipulate society were now out front and available for everybody to see and wake up to. And this is the moment that humanity had the opportunity to free itself from the bondage that the elites had them in since the beginning of civilization. But if you thought that the people in control were just gonna give up and not fight back, well, you'd be wrong, and they did fight back. See, these companies that emerged in the internet age had a fundamental flaw that the elites used to exploit them and regain control. In fact, tighten control like never before. The services that these companies provided to people were free, and the way that the companies made money was through advertising, which meant that the goal of these platforms was to keep people engaged and hooked longer and longer so they could make more and more money. So the elites thought the bigger we make these companies, the richer we make them, the more money we give them, they will inevitably work for their own self-interests and figure out how to keep people hooked longer and longer and longer on these platforms. And the elites already knew what the social media companies ended up finding out. We would much rather be entertained than we would be educated. And when the social media companies saw that this kind of mindless content was extremely popular with people, they learned how to prioritize showing people mindless, time-consuming nonsense. So the algorithm changed from becoming something that could be extremely beneficial to humanity to prioritizing exploiting the worst tendencies people have. It prioritized mindless brain rot, which catches people in these hour-long doom scrolls, divisive, polarizing political content, which makes people point the finger at one another and say, the other people are the problem, not the people in charge, but the other guy. It was all a distraction. And the strategy here is exactly the same. Keep people distracted, keep them mindless, keep them consuming more and more detrimental content. And they won't even have time to think about who's in charge and their own oppression. And they will never consider spending the time learning a new skill or opening up their eyes to the way the world operates or who's really in charge, and that they're a whole lot less free than they might think that they are. If everyone came home after an 8-hour shift and spent the next 5 hours growing and developing, becoming self-reliant, the elites understand human nature. They know that everybody strives to be prosperous, but with this new control mechanism, they can keep everybody distracted and stuck on the hamster wheel of monotony and being a modern day slave, and they'll never have a chance of waking up and threatening their power. If you guys did like this video, please like, subscribe, share it with a friend, open your eyes to what's really happening, and make sure that you're consuming good quality content like what I put out on this channel.